Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of WTF Walk the Floors. I'm Stephanie Ledger with First Rate Hospitality, and I'm joined with my co-host, Michèle Klein of Klein Hospitality. How are you today, Michèle?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Stephanie. And I want to introduce you to someone very special on the show today. It is Melissa Aarskaug. And Melissa is an absolute, she's like a freaking open book of the know-how for anything that has to do with cybersecurity. But I'm not going to tell you anything else about her. Melissa, tell the audience who you are, a little bit about your career and why they should trust your knowledge as much as I do. Convince them. And then we're going to talk about cybersecurity, how it plays a role in budgeting, and what does that mean, especially in our gaming world. How are you, Melissa?
I'm great. Happy New Year. Glad to be here. A little bit about me. My background is in civil environmental engineering. So before I found my way into the gaming world, I was working as an engineer. And I guess the joke now is I am a engineer by trade, but carry a sales personality. So I love to help our customers better understand cybersecurity from just a general discussion. So we just talk about it, not technical, better understand what keeps them up at night and kind of reverse engineer our approach that meets their budgets.
Very nice. I love that. That was like a 10-second overview. That's fantastic. And we could talk about your career for hours and hours on end. But let's focus mainly on what does budgeting for cybersecurity mean?
Absolutely. Budgeting. It's a tricky thing when you look at cybersecurity as it crosses into different divisions. So when I think of cybersecurity, let's say 10 years ago, I would think it would mainly just be the IT departments that had to worry about cybersecurity. And now I have a different pair of goggles, and I realize that budget may affect multiple divisions. Like say, for example, the HR department. So if the HR department at an organization is responsible for training and education, and there's cybersecurity e-learning training that either their insurance company has asked for or they do it proactively at the company, that budget may fall under HR or it may fall under IT because it is a technical software. It just depends on the organization. And I think of other divisions like the finance division or the legal department or all employees at a company. Their responsibility is just as important as the HR's responsibility to train the employees. So each employee gets phishing. We all get it. I know I get it personally and professionally daily on LinkedIn, on every social media channel. And it's my responsibility to protect my company email and my personal email.
Absolutely.
Yes. And Melissa, tell me when have you seen some of these major changes in the way we think when it comes to budgeting for cybersecurity, right? Whereas 10 years ago, it was mainly focused in one place, but now there's all these moving pieces and all these different departments that collaborate with each other on the same topic. When do you think this mindset starts changing and we start looking at budgeting for this particular item line in a more specific way?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say it's not if, it's when. I think in some cases in the gaming industry as a whole, it took an actual breach for organizations to actually sit down and put the money and the team together to say, okay, we got to figure this out. We've been hit. And some of those organizations may have had cybersecurity insurance that only paid for a portion. and they had to come out of pocket with another portion. And I think in some cases it took, for some casino suppliers and others in the industry, to have something happen before they actually did something, to sit down and put budget on paper, because it's not just the hiring of the people, it's the tools that you use. In some jurisdictions, they require cybersecurity assessments of the actual casinos or their sports books or iGaming segments. So they have to consider that's part of their overall cybersecurity budget. And those are fairly costly year over year for organizations. And then if you think about it, Nevada just put out a new regulation where some of these casinos the Nevada casinos are going to have to do a cybersecurity assessment. Now, if you're a casino that has an organization that has 20, 30, 40 casinos, that can be a costly number, even to, the bigger casinos like Caesars, MGM. So yeah, I think it takes sometimes something happening to sit down and say, we got to do something, we need to hire the people, or we need to outsource it. And then some organizations, I came up, actually this year at G2E in October, I had a tribe that, since I've been in the gaming industry 11 years, it was the first time I sat down with the tribe itself and their chairman, the casino executive, and the regulator. That's the first time since I've been involved in the industry where everybody had a seat at the table and we figured out what we need to do based on regulatory requirements, casino requirements, and other tribal requirements like HIPAA with the healthcare records that the tribe store. So some are proactive, and some it actually, unfortunately, takes something happening, or even something happening to a neighboring casino, for them to say, okay, we need to look at this.
Wonderful. Yeah. And what would you say would be some basic steps for our listeners and managers to be able to doing some checks and balance to making sure that they are in a line with, if there is to become an attack, or also to prevent, being proactive instead of reactive?
Absolutely. I think I always say education is the easiest one. Easiest defense. If your people spot things, to say something, right? So I know I've heard from clients where they've had administrative assistants catch a potential hacker, just realizing, oh, wow, the CEO doesn't email at 2:00 in the morning. I wonder if this is him. And she sent him a note the next day and caught a potential bad situation. So training, having employees realize something as simple as that, knowing that CEO doesn't work at 2 a.m. and questioning it. Hey, do you really want me to order $120 Starbucks gift cards, or, just simple things like that. And actually thinking on their feet and getting the training is always something helpful. That's the first line of defense for any breach. And then I think knowing, depending on the state you're in, and if you're a supplier or a casino, different requirements. If you're in hospitality, different requirements. So dealing with point of sale systems and PCI requirements, knowing what you need to accomplish as it pertains to regulatory requirements or whatever your specific spaces in the industry. And then talking to your peers. I think a lot of these breaches I've been involved with in the last few years had Casino A called Casino B 5 minutes down the street and said, hey, somebody hit our XYZ, just giving you a heads up, and having those people to communicate and collaborate with. I know Vegas does it, and some of the states, the tribal states, have a group like a tribal ISAC group. TribalNet does tribal ISAC. There's different ISAC groups that are out there to collaborate with your peers and share what you're seeing and validating that it's, is true, or what they should be looking out for is very important. And then I always think having your vendors and partners as they make sense. So, your insurance company is a partner of yours, sitting down with them and running through your cybersecurity questionnaire, and understanding what you put into that affects your policies. It affects your deductibles, just like your health insurance and your car insurance does. Sitting down with them and saying, hey, how can I increase or decrease my policy? And then the vendors that you use for your services, engaging them regularly and having a sit down. I do quarterly business reviews with our ongoing clients, and I sit down with them and make sure we're in the right spot, they're in the right spot, and catch up on anything. It's an open floor to connect with them on. And I think just really communicating is key to each other and your peers.
Absolutely.
I love it. It's so simple, right? It's the three basic rules that we always talk about, which are training, knowledge, and community. And it's so simple. As long as you are partnered with the right people that can provide you with accurate, on-time information, and then making sure that your team on every single level understands what to look for.
Absolutely.
Anyone can really help, even your line level employees.
100%. And I think, a lot of times if I go back and I look at the remediation that we did for clients, a lot of them, I would say the majority of them could have been simple communication, like you said, or even trusting and communicating with your vendors, right? So we've come in and done remediation for clients where we're not their managed services company. It's another managed services company. And it was something as simple as they got a new firewall and didn't let their managed services company know that they had set up new servers and firewalls, and they were only monitoring this portion, not the entire portion. And so even something like that, where you think you're doing a good thing by having a managed services company support your 365 operation, and you forget to tell them, oh, by the way, we're moving, the gaming commission office and the casino, or whatever the situation is. There's been more than one that's, the vendors didn't even know that they had expanded their infrastructure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we're going to see a lot in 2023 is in the hospitality casinos and hotels, when they're trying to bring in these different technology vendors that have, say, an open API, or they're working with different clients, to making sure that they're in alignment with the property as well, of being PCI compliant too, because I foresee that's where we're going to start seeing the attackers going, is now through these very well-known vendors that work with hospitality industry, to being able to get the credit card information and different information about guests and employees as well.
Absolutely.
All right, Melissa, what's your WTF moment? I'm sure you have many, but pick one.
Yeah, every time I think of WTF, I have many of those. I think since I've been in this space, the more that I collaborate, and we just talked about it, and talk to my peers and talk to other, even similar companies in cybersecurity. What are you guys doing? I always get a different perspective. I've co-presented last year, I think with about 7 other cybersecurity companies, and I co-presented with them, and how they do things is really different than how we do things in the gaming space. And I think for me, what the F moment is collaboration this year, and setting out clear goals. I know it's so cliche. We're in New Year's goal setting, and but I think I would call them, intentions maybe, or what is the acronym, but I think just collaboration is going to be key this year, because it's more costly. I think the more collaboration everybody does with their cybersecurity policies, their vendors, their IT staff, their HR department, the better it is for everyone, the more cost savings organizations are going to have, and the more secure organizations will be.
I love that.
Awesome.
Great nugget. Thank you for that.
Michèle, do you have a WTF with the cybersecurity?
I have a WTF moment, sure. that is in alignment with the topic. I did an assessment of everything learning and development for a very large organization. And when I started splitting it into regions, I noticed that in one particular region, that is it's a very important region, very much of a revenue generating region. The VP and the director of IT had not gone through their training. They did training virtually, right? They didn't even have to go into training. They just had to sit in front of their computer and go through the training every X amount of months. Neither of them had done so in a period of a year and a half. And it was cybersecurity related. So that was most definitely a walk the floors kind of situation where you're like, how did no one notice this in a whole year and a half? And they're the two key people that should be leading by example. So yes, that's my
Starts at the
moment.
top. Starts at the top,
Right?
right?
Just at the top. Seriously. What about you, Stephanie? Do you
Yes.
have any of those?
Oh yeah, so mine would be being in New York, we would get a lot of very powerful political people, I guess you could say, and then also to in the finance being so close to Wall Street. And we've been talking about on the cybersecurity for all of our employees and the hotel itself, but there's a lot that goes in when I was working for this property of realizing as well from the guest point perspective as well to making sure that they were compliant, because there was in the news of making sure that other countries weren't listening in and making sure being able to win this piece of business, to being able to show what policies and being PCI compliance that we were, to having these very well-known profile people to be staying in the property. And then of course we would have the employees to being able to open up to the open Wi-Fi and being able to now get into what they were trying to avoid.
So I think that we can all agree that it's not just protecting your brand and your assets, it's also protecting the people that work for you. It's also protecting your guests, your patrons, and anyone who steps foot at your
Yeah,
property. Melissa, thank you so much for being here today. We will definitely bring you back if you are in agreement with it, so that we can talk a little more about this, because I think that is not just a trending topic, but it's a topic that we don't hear a lot about on the operating side, right? It's almost like it's very niched, this topic. So we would love to have you back if you're cool with it.
Anytime. I'd love to be back with you guys. And I hope you have a great rest of the week. Happy New Year. And until next time.
Thank you so much for being here.